One individual who may be less likely to give the government credit at the moment, certainly critical of some aspects of lockdown, is the businessman Declan Ganley, who took to social media yesterday to say that the Irish Catholic bishops should order their parishes to reopen from this Saturday forward for the holding of COVID mitigated public worship, with priests and stewards as well as the congregants all aware we face possible arrest and prosecution. Let's see the police raid hundreds of churches on Sunday. Mask, distance, sanitise, reduce inside numbers, use car parks, peacefully resist in silence, don't verbally abuse law enforcement. That's the advice from Declan Ganley. Declan joins me now. You're very welcome to the show. You're calling, is it, for a campaign of civil disobedience, is that right?
That's right, Kieran. Ireland is now in the unique place of being the only country in the world, in Europe, to ban public worship. That is quite remarkable. And when you look at the findings and the science that's come out of other countries with respect to the infection risk from COVID spread at masses in occasions of public worship, the evidence is that they're very safe, especially when you put good COVID mitigation protocols in place, as were put in place by the Irish Catholic Church here last year. So that is socially distancing, mask wearing requirements, one-way pedestrian traffic, sanitisation and so forth. So after the restrictions were lifted in the US, there was 1 million Catholic masses that were looked at, and the incidence of COVID spread traced to those was exactly zero, notwithstanding the fact that there were asymptomatic people, so people that turned out to have had COVID that were at those masses because they were masked, because they were socially distanced and everything else. There was no spread from those. And this can be done safely. And in case after case across the world, from the US Supreme Court to most recently in Scotland, in Chile, in Switzerland, in France, we have seen where bans on public worship were overturned by the courts. There is a challenge currently in the courts. The Irish courts are very sort of bunged up because of lack of resources and for other reasons. I first took this case back in October, November. We're 7 months in. It's up for hearing again in another 3 weeks. But the actual case itself may not be heard for some considerable period of time. And every single day, the Irish people that want to be able to practice their faith in accordance with their constitutional rights as guaranteed by the Irish Constitution and as guaranteed by Article 9 of the ECHR, we are being banned unconstitutionally from being able to attend.
Now, you know none of those constitutional rights are absolute. All rights in the Constitution come with caveats. That's what one of the defenders of the government might say.
And that is correct. So the caveat to that constitutional right in the Irish Constitution is so long as those things are not a threat to public order. The bar for what constitutes a threat to public order should be a high one, and the evidence is in from across the world that the holding of a Catholic public mass with COVID mitigation protocols in place is not a threat, and therefore a ban is disproportionate, and that is what courts around the world have found where these cases have been heard. In Ireland, we continue to be banned, and your first question was, in the context of my calling for or suggesting that we have a campaign now of civil disobedience is it is the only near-term path 7 months into this legal process starting, the only short-term path we have to being able to get back to exercise our constitutional right to participate in public worship for those that want to do it, is through a campaign of civil disobedience, to be sensible, to do all of the things that we said, social distance, take all of the precautions, but be able to go and practice our faith in accordance with our rights.
We do have a big announcement coming tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock from the Taoiseach that will set out the path for reopening the economy. We don't know what detail will be in it, but there'll be some sort of ambition, you'd imagine, for Mass being able to resume with much greater numbers in attendance. I mean, are you refusing to run the race or run any more of the race once the finish line is in sight?
No, I'm not. But the problem with this finish line, Kieran, is that it's the ever receding finish line. It's you think you've got to it, and then it's moved out again later on. And I understand the reasons why that might take place. The criminalisation of participation, of going to Mass and participating in a public Mass, either saying it or attending it, the criminalisation of that is an affront to our Constitution, and we should care about that. The fact that it is done and that it is so disproportionate is outrageous, and we cannot.
Would you? Sorry to interrupt. Would you be calling for this campaign of civil disobedience if that criminalisation didn't exist? If it was still simply just a guideline or a recommendation or a plea to the church not to have Mass until NPHET and the government recommend otherwise? Is the issue with the criminalisation?
No, of course. That's a very good question, and I think it's a combination of sort of straws that lead to sort of the breaking of the camel's back, as it were. Yes. So, for example, the restrictions that were in place in October of last year, were late last year, were arguably not as strong or as nasty as the ones that were just put in, reinforced just a couple of weeks ago. So far from dialing things back, they've actually dialed things up. And you get to a point where you say the number of paths that are available to be able to assert and claim your right in a peaceful manner. You have a menu of options, and you could go to the courts, you can go to your TDs, you can do all of these things. But at a point, civil disobedience becomes a tool. A peaceful civil disobedience, responsible civil disobedience, becomes a tool that sometimes has to be availed of. And in my opinion, this is my personal opinion, what the bishops do is up to them. In my personal opinion, I think we've now well reached that point.